Hey everyone, what's going on today? How's everyone's Halloween? Gonna wait until a couple of you pile in, and I'll talk about what we're gonna go over today. And today's gonna be kind of it's gonna be an easier week this week. And um, yeah. Hey Lena, what's up? How was your Halloween? Do you celebrate? I passed candy out to children. Well, some of them were not children. I don't care if you trick or treat, like 20, 21, whatever. But if you're 40 years old plus, that doesn't make me feel great. You were doing homework. That's a bummer. I'm sorry. Hopefully this week in this class for you, I know you do your revisions right away, so thankfully you'll kind of get an easy week right now. Do you like scary movies? Did you watch any? Oh, well, you guys answer. I know people will kind of slowly pile in. So when you guys do pile in, just say hey and I'll say hello back. Um, yeah, my Halloween entailed passing out candy, playing some Mario Wonder, which is really fun. I don't know if you guys have played Mario Wonder yet, but it's very cute. Someone said it was like the best Mario ever, and I was like, I don't know if it's the best, but it's the most fun since Mario Odyssey came out. And Mario RPG is coming out soon too, which is exciting. All right. Oh, and the new Spider-Man came out too. I mean, you know what? That's dedication and that is some willpower to not really, do that. Or it's just the way it goes is not having time to really watch a bunch of stuff. My wife is currently going for her master's in nursing, and so she's in the same boat. She's just loaded up with hers is unfortunately like writing papers and doing a bunch of reading, which is just to me that is the rough part of school is doing all that. Also math. I've never been good at math, but alrighty, I'll kind of introduce the what we're doing this week, and maybe I'll recap at the end of class. But so this week, do from the, it's really due, what is this? It's available now, but it's due Monday, which is Monday is the 6th. So it's due, the due date range is the 6th through the 13th. So you guys have a week to turn it in and get these done. This should be relatively easy to do, to go in there and just basically what you're doing is you're improving upon the videos that you've already completed and submitted. So all of the feedback that I've given you guys in live streams or that I've written on Canvas, whether it's through the rubric or in comments, you will take that information that I've given you and those changes that I've given you or suggested, and you will implement those into your new videos. Well, into your videos, right? And then you're going to re-render those videos, and then you're going to compile them together into one singular MP4. Now, I thought about a couple things when it came to this, right? So here I say you're going to compile and re-render the videos and the changes that you've made into one single MP4 and upload that single MP4 to this assignment. Here's the good notes for you. Here's the notes that hopefully will answer your questions. If your project didn't receive any feedback because it was late, then you can still include this on your revision round. However, I will be deducting points, right? So if it's the first time I've seen this, you can still throw it into your first revision round, but you'll have points deducted. If it's missing entirely, you will have points deducted. If you have previously made your revisions and then resubmitted them to be regraded, just include the updated versions in your revision round. So Lena, I think that would entail you, because any of the feedback that I give you, you usually get it done within a few days. And so you'll just take all of those updated ones that you've done and made all those changes with, and then you'll put them together in a singular MP4 and submit that. If you have received no feedback, which is very, very rare, then please just do the same thing as I was discussing before. Take any of those updated ones, or most up-to-date versions, and include them in the video. And you'll be making changes to the following projects. Now, I know not all of the projects that you've done so far are on this list. We're missing the EveBot, and we're missing the one that we just recently did last week, which is the Monarch butterfly one. That's because those revisions will be included on a second revision round, on a different revision round. And so in this one, I want you to include your revisions done to the 3 bouncing balls, the typography and motion design project, the real and surreal and Cinema 4D project, the Cinema 4D principles of motion graphics, and the After Effects principles of motion graphics, and finally the hierarchies or your robot arm or assembly line, right? So any of the changes that I've given you to all of these 6 of these projects, you'll implement those changes, put them all into one MP4, render that out, and send that to me. Basically, the only thing you have to deliver is that one singular video, including all the stuff, and render it out at 1920 by 1080 at 24 FPS. So really, the big thing to also remember here is just rendering out at what you normally do, which all of you guys are pretty good at. Maybe a couple slip every once in a while, but you know, things happen. But most of the time you guys are exporting them at the appropriate frame rate and aspect ratio. Let's see here. So that's really just it for the revision round. I know that Lena, you're in the chat right now. I don't know if anyone else is, but do you have any questions regarding this? What's up, Nakara? Nakara, I know you had a question. You sent me an email yesterday and I responded to that email. Also, I don't know if you heard me read through these, but if you didn't, just go to the module and look up. Here's the exceptions of things like if your work is late, or if you resubmitted things with changes already, or if it had no feedback. then there's some like answers here for you. So if you have questions about that, you can do this, and always just check that response I sent you in your email. And if you have other questions, you can just either email them again or Slack me. Cool. Thanks, Lena. But yeah, that's it for the revision round. And I might touch base on this before the end of class, but today we're basically going to be going over your guys's work on the last couple projects. So we're going to be reviewing your work on the Eve bots, and then we're also going to be reviewing your work on the um, Monarch butterfly, your 3 scene animations if you've submitted it. And I'll give you guys feedback on those. And notice those, neither of those are included on here, right? So you don't have to worry about the feedback right away, but you will have to worry about the feedback in our next revision assignment for those ones. Yeah, not a problem, Nakara. No worries. And then, yeah. So, and I think I have like one, if I have any stragglers sent in, like any straggler projects that were sent in, I'm going to check my email during class, and then I'm also going to check my Canvas inbox during class to see if there's any projects that still need to be reviewed, and if there are in there, I will also go over them. And then I'm kind of going to grade as I go, so you guys get kind of a live grading. So there'll be a couple times where I'm just a little quiet over off to the side doing something. So I've got everything ready. Let me just get my stuff ready on my end. All right. Let me Okay, I'm just reading through. We're going to go through the Eve bot first, and then we'll go through the Monarch one, and then I know Jasmine sent me an extra one to go through. I'll go over that at the end of class as well. And then I'm just reading through the criteria of the rubric right now, so I grade them appropriately. So I'll kind of read through this criteria with you guys if you want. Let's see here. Let me bring this over real quick so we can look at it. So I grade this off of, obviously, the rubrics is how the grading is done. The first one's parenting. So all anchor points are placed in the appropriate location on each moving part. So her head and her arms, and obviously her body is going to be the main one. All of the moving parts are linked to each other in the proper order. So that will be the parenting section, and that's worth 20 points. The animation section is the Eve bot moves into the scene, hovers in place a little bit, looks around, sees something, and then flies off screen, right? All of the motion is you want it to be eased properly, appropriately, and making sure that Eve isn't moving too erratically and too crazy on screen, and that she's on screen long enough for us to see what's going on. And then I want to see that there's clearly something she's looking at, and it's the target tag that you guys have. So her head's going to have to move, from side to side on there. Color design materials and scene, a consistent and well thought out color palette throughout the imagery, which is pretty easy because Eve is essentially just white. The design of Eve is appropriate to the assignment. It has a face and eyes applied, and the materials used in the scene are appropriately applied. There's enough lighting used, a backdrop in the scene, and a camera that does not move. Right? The biggest thing is that the camera is not moving, Eve is moving. And then finally, as far as the constraints of the video format, they're 1920, 1080, 24 frames a second, 10 points. So the parenting is worth 20, animation's worth 40 points, color design and materials in the scene overall is worth 30 points, and the format is worth 10 points. So that is how we'll be grading. Let me go back over here. All right, and so let's start over here with Giselle's. Really good looking. Let me, I'm going to put on a little background audio just so we have a little something. I just want to make sure it's not super loud in the stream. I don't know. Can you guys hear that? You guys are just hearing my voice right now, I think. Hold on. Now I think you'll be able to hear the background music if I turn it up. Cool. Yeah, I think you guys should be hearing that just fine. All right, so back to Giselle's work. Everything looks really nice here, Giselle. I think that in fact, let me bring this into an After Effects project because it'll just be easier to do it that way. I think I can just open it. My media player's been giving me issues lately. It feels like class is moving really quickly. Literally in a month and a week, you guys are done with class. I'm sure you guys are ready for the break. And it opens. Lovely. Just close this. Import all the videos. I think it's in my downloads folder. Nice. Hey Lena, did you submit the Monarch one yet? Let's see, I have Jave, Tristan, Jesus, and who is this? Keith. Cool. It's okay if not. Like, it's obviously not due right now. All right, let's go back to Giselle's. Let's play this. Lovely. I think that was a great job. I think that, I would say to bring her just a little bit further into... Oh, is it open? Let me see here. Just see me. Yep, it should be. Just at the beginning, right about here, I would just make sure that you bring Eve a little bit more into the center frame so that we can, like she just starts off here and maybe your look target is over here and then she sees it over here and then flies off there. Other than that, I think that the amount of jitter that you have on her, it's not the jitter, it's the movement of the line when you created the cappuccino thing. I would just maybe smooth those out just slightly so it's not so, I don't know, crazy. I think it's okay, to be honest. It doesn't really bother me that much. As I'm watching it, I think that, obviously your lighting in here is good. You have the appropriate HDR on the background. I would maybe soften the shadows up a little bit, maybe the intensity of the light slightly on one of them, so one of the shadows isn't so hard. But other than that, I just, the only other thing is centering Eve a little bit more so she's up in the frontal. And you can take those keyframes that you made using the cappuccino and just shuffle those over a little bit. And you should be able to center her more and not have a problem doing that. It should be a very easy, quick fix. Other than that, though, like her arm movement, she's got good arm movement going on. She's looking around. She's obviously following a target tag. The materials on everything look really nice. You've done a really good job. So way to go on this, Giselle. Oh yeah, take your time, Lena. I have to go through all of these first. So just whenever you have a minute, okay? I can always look over it also at the end of class. I can look over it tomorrow. It's not that big of a deal. I'll give you still feedback on it. Let's see. Let's make sure these are all. Here's one thing. All right, I jinxed myself at the beginning class. It's at 30 frames a second, so you want to make sure that's at 24 frames a second. But it is 1920 by 1080, I believe. Yes, all of them are 1920 by 1080, but we have a few in here that are at 30. So we'll just have to go back and fix those. Simple fixes, right? Just interpreting the footage. I'm going to move this property panel right over there. I should have this set up for review mode so I can do it that way. Cool. All right, next on our list, I have jades. First of all, cool background here. I like the lighting and I like the background. And I actually like that the background is muted and it doesn't really have much reflection to it. So the material that you put on the background is nice. It doesn't take away from the rest of the composition. Overall, really nice. I think the speed of everything is really nice. I think that Eve is slightly a little too jittery here. I like the intensity of this light here, so the shadow is a little bit softer versus the intensity of the light over to this side, which is obviously more intense and has a harder shadow. Right, so I enjoyed that. I would just say the same thing here with the jitteriness is just smooth out those curves where she's on and maybe work in some rotations. Well, nope, you got a good rotation of her body happening coming in, so I like that. Don't worry about that. The rotations are good. She looks, she sees something, and she flies off screen. I think that's really nice. I would just smooth out the middle section so she's not bopping around too much. And that would be really the only change that I have for you on this. You guys really all overall did a really good job on this project. I saw what you guys were submitting inside of Slack and I liked what I was seeing. So a lot of you are going to do really well on this one. But the parenting was appropriate here. Animation, like I said, really good. Just needed a little bit of a like smoothing out in the center part. And yours is at 24 frames a second. So we are good on that. Format's good. right, let's go to the next one here, which is Josh. Ah, we got a little wave here. All right, Josh. Good start on this. I think there's some stuff to improve upon. But overall, she does come into the scene. She's looking around a little bit, and she does wave, which is cool. But I can tell that the animation of Eve's head is a rotation and not a look target. And so, because when we're coming in, her head's like disconnecting from her body here, which shouldn't normally happen. So the parenting is off on Eve. I would really suggest watching the parenting section again, and especially rewatching the part where we did the look target, because it's a lot less work doing it with the techniques that we did in class versus trying to fully animate her body. And that's why she looks really rigid and stiff, is because we're not using that cappuccino effect. So she doesn't have that like that more organic flight path into her position and then out of her position, including while she's hovering. You want some of that hovering to happen in place, right, where she's kind of just floating around in a spot but isn't stagnant, right? Because Eve never is really still. She's always just kind of zipping back and forth between positions, and you want her to kind of look. Now, the arm rotation for the waving, you can still do that. But you know, it's obviously a rotation from the arm, and it's not parented appropriately. So you're definitely going to need to kind of move back to the parenting section and adjust that, and then go in and do the animation over again, because it won't take too long because you're using the cappuccino. So really the only thing is smoothing out that path line that is created with the cappuccino like plugin that you're using inside of Cinema 4D. The other thing is I would smooth out the geometry on Eve's body and her head. So I would add more of the segments to it. I'm okay if looks like she has like a bottom and a top part to like her capsule body. Like I'm okay with the shape of her, but I would like to see her head just smoother, because right now I can see all of the little segments that are happening. So again, go in there, increase the segments, you can change it to from like I don't know what it is, like a regular sphere to a hexahedron or something, and that works out a little bit better when you're working with her round head. But yeah, those are really the changes that I want you to start with on first, is the parenting, the animation, a little bit of the other thing. I noticed there's no real lights in the scene either because there are no shadows. So you're going to want to have to add lights as well. So you do have, you have some work ahead of you, but it's a good start on this. Her materials, like you can't see the shininess of her body because of the material. And I know this is the viewport renderer, so it's going to be a lower render quality, which is okay. You can still use the viewport renderer. I would prefer use the physical renderer for this, or the standard renderer, but I would focus on the big things first, are the parenting and then the animation, and then your last edit to do the like updating the scene so it has lights and stuff in there. And what are you at? You're at 24 frames a second. That's great. 1920, 1080, so your formatting's appropriate. All right, next one on deck, we have Natalie. Let's go ahead and play this, Natalie. I love the richness, by the way, of the blue backdrop. We got the cat ears on this one. Love it. Cool. All right. Don't worry about that flash. Again, that was, I don't know why my graphics card does that. Even if I update it, it still does every once in a while. So I think that overall this is a really good job on here. I can see that you have the lights, you have a semi-reflective material because it's kind of reflecting Eve here. I like her color that she's like this soft pink. It's suiting to kind of that kawaii look, you know, of Eve as much as you could go for her, but with the cute, you know, like little cat ears and stuff. She's all parented correctly. I think that the first thing I would do is update the look target so it's not looking so far to her right side. Um, and that way she's kind of, when she flies in, she's kind of not looking directly at the camera, but slightly looking off from the camera. And that look target isn't way over here. So she's like flying in with her head like that, because what's happening is her head ends up being kind of cockeyed here. And you get this weird area where the geometry kind of intersects with each other and creates this odd look. I would also maybe smooth out your arm a little bit more, and I'm not sure if that's because of the initial segments that you added on to that, but I would just look into smoothing that out. You can also smooth it out a little bit more, increasing the subdivision surface, the amount of subdivisions in the subdivision surface. But I really like this. The, you know, beginning of it, I think that's really cute. But yes, her head does kind of turn in a really odd way. And so even if the look target is right next to, like, similar to in space to where the camera is, you still might have this issue where her head is intersecting the body because of the angle of the body right now, because you have it at kind of an unnatural 90-degree angle to where her head would be, even looking at the look target. So I would just drop the angle of her body a little bit there. So just relax on the angle of that. I think that she hovers in place really well. That looks amazingly smooth. You did a great job there. And then she looks at the look target. She follows that look target across the way, and then she kind of flies into that area. I would really just adjust the beginning part of that. I think that it looks really smooth and nice in the center. And then I'm totally fine with that. I think that in this section right here, her body is going more in the opposite direction. So I would kind of make her body just shoot her right into the off screen, like she's following that, versus being at that angle again and do that and shooting off screen that way, because she kind of gets into that really, that's a better angle for the beginning as well. I think the rotation here is okay. You don't have to change that part. Just really the beginning part in that look target where that is. But I'm happy with the materials that you've used in here. Everything looks really good. The design is really cute. I'm into it. The only other thing is you've got it at 30 frames a second. So you also want to change that to 24. So you're just going to bring that in. Remember, you guys, bring it in here, interpret footage, go to main, and then change it to 24 frames a second. That's all you got to do when you bring in. But obviously, it's going to be your PNG sequence from inside of... words are hard. From inside of Cinema 4D. You guys are doing good on this assignment, though. Did you guys like using the cappuccino? Like, kind of the plug-in or offset of Cinema 4D. Did you like using that? All right, next we have Tristan. Cool. First of all, I'm into like the yellow, like, fading into green. I don't see that too often. A lot of people tend to use blues, purples, a little bit cooler colors, and I don't see much warm being used in here, so I like this. Keith is not much of a coffee person. Did I say something? What did I say about coffee? Did I say something about coffee? I feel like I'm might have just did. And I feel like I'm going crazy. Oh, cappuccino. That went fully over my head. That was embarrassing. And it wasn't for you, Keith. I was like, what are you talking about? You're a coffee person. Oh my gosh. I get it now. You know, I have to explain it to me, a simpleton. Um, that was funny. I get the joke now. It definitely saves time, but controlling the mouse is a bit tricky. Yeah, the control of the mouse has its like drawbacks of that. I haven't tried it in a drawing tablet. So I'm curious if using a drawing tablet might be simpler to do, but I don't know if Cinema 40 works with like a pen tablet or not. I haven't really tried it actually. You submitted the 3 scene butterfly. Okay, I'm going to download that right now. Let me go back. Thank you for letting me know that. Keith, that was so funny. I am like, because I've done that too, by the way. I've said things and then forget what I say like 2 seconds later. And so, and it's just part of my ADHD brain. It's so jumbled up there sometimes that it gets kind of clogged. But that was funny. Because my brain went like a freaking index file. Like it was going through like what I said in the last 5 minutes. And I was like, what am I talking about? And then it hit me. Sorry. It's just making me laugh a little inside. You use your stylus and it's kind of nice, but I did redo it with the mouse. Was it because the stylus doesn't really work as well in the Z space? Like, does it push it back in Z space as well? Cool. I'm happy you guys have tried this stuff out because it helps me. And I just added yours, Lena, to here as well. So we'll be able to grade that as well. Let me go back here. I want to bring up Tristan's. Eve modeling. Tristan's here. All right. Let me play this so we can hear. Nice. Really good job overall as well, Tristan. I noticed that, first of all, it's 30 frames per second, so let's adjust that to 24. And, that'll be that's a simple fix. The other thing is Eve kind of moves into frame really quickly, like almost too quickly. So you're going to want to slow that initial animation down. The amount of hovering that she's doing in that spot, that's fine right there. You might want to add in some rotations of her body so that it's not just like she's not just hovering straight up and down in just kind of in this area, that it's like her body is kind of naturally moving with the hover. So I would like to see a little bit of rotation there with that. Other than that, she's like looking at the look target as she comes in. Her head kind of is cockeyed a little bit here, right? Where it's turned really far back, like The Exorcist. But, her head's not attached to her body, so she can do more of that. What I would maybe do is you could always rotate her body a little bit and initially have the rotated body like she's flying in kind of sideways looking, and then rotate along with where her head's at. I think that's what you're missing really in this entire animation is a little bit of rotation of her body. A little more of a rotation. The end section where she looks and flies off screen, that's perfect. That looks great. You could even add a little bit more rotation in there if you wanted to, but the biggest thing is in the beginning, slowing that down, adjusting the rotation, adding a little more rotation here where she's hovering. And also, I think it looks like you have lights on her, but you might not have turned your shadows on in your rendering. So you're going to want to turn the shadows on not only in your viewport settings so you can see them, but also in your render settings. I might be something under like the filter area. You know, you go to the render settings, viewport settings, filter. It might be in that section, or it's in the basic tab of those two options. But if you have any trouble with that when you re-render it, let me know. Other than that, I think this looks really nice. I think that the materials on her are well done. I like the lighting. I see that you kind of have like this warmer indigo lighting and then kind of this green lighting over here. So it's kind of an interesting color choice that we have going on. Almost like the native, like I don't know if Jamaica's colors are even like they should, in my mind, obviously green, yellow, and red, but I don't know if that's like, is that part of their flag is green, yellow, and black. So the Caribbean, like the Jamaican flag. But I like the color combination that you're having. I would maybe even change this light more to a red and less of less of a violet color. Maybe more of a that red tone. But overall, you did a good job. Let me see here. Parenting looks good on it. And just the other thing is the frames, the FPS just needs to be updated. All right, Melissa's is going to be next. Wally and Eve. Am I going to be surprised? All right, Eve comes in. She looks around, nice and smooth. Oh my gosh. You did it. All right, all right. Look at you adding some extra work in here. I like that. You did that. So let's focus on Eve real quick, and then we'll move into Wally. I believe you did the viewport render as well. So the one thing I would update is including shadows in there so I can see the shadows from the lights. I can see that you're using a sky object and that you have the kind of HDR studio background on that, which looks great. The parenting all looks good. I really like the angle that Eve flies in on. And in fact, it looks like you update the look target as well. So she's initially looking somewhere before she flies in, and then she kind of looks again. That look target moves around, and then she flies off. So she's, even while hovering, like that look target is moving constantly, almost like a laser in a cat, right? The cat's following the laser. You can think of it that way. And I think that it looks really good and fairly smooth if we watch the head. Yeah, I'm okay with the head motion. I would just, in the section where she looks from here to off screen, I would maybe add a little bit more time in between when her head's following it and when she decides to go. So let her head follow the target when it hits a certain point, and then she goes. Because right now she's moving at the same time that her head is following the look target, and it's all just a little too quick. And so that will help kind of slow down that motion and allow us to see her like following that as well. Let me, I think as far as her materials go, she looks really nice. The parenting looks good. The rotation amount, the arm rotation. Yeah, I think you've done a really good job here and spent a lot of time on it. Keith said when I asked about the stylus, no, it's more of a look preference. I had more flow with the pen, but not enough movement. I was looking for you didn't have enough the movement that you were looking for, so you switched the mouse for more of a jumpy, less flowy motion. Okay, cool. I can see what you're saying. It was a little too smooth with that. Was it updating with the time too? So like if you zoomed in and slowed down and kind of did that, it would do it as well like that. But I can see why you were opting for the mouse. It's more of um like this random motion to it. The other thing that you did correctly, Melissa, by the way, is the 24 frames a second. That looks great. So now let's look at Wally, right? Because the more you guys add into your videos, the more I'm going to have to look over and critique. I'm obviously going to grade you on the Eve section of it, but let's go ahead and like check Wally out, because I think that you did a really cool job modeling him. And like a decent job on the materials and stuff, especially because he doesn't like his you guys don't know who to do that. The gears moving around the object in here with animation of like a tread happening. Even I would have to really do a little research into that. But he kind of moves in a perfect way, similar to what I would see Wally do. Here is a little issue with him where he's skidding. So it almost looks like he's like kind of stopping on ice right here. So make sure he makes that full circle and not a skid. That he like fully rotates there instead. And then he can move back around, because the rest of it looks great. You've got him looking at a look target as well, which is fantastic. And he's got that chaotic energy that Wally always has, right? Because Eve's always way more chill and Wally's like got the anxiety. So it's very appropriate for him. And looking around, I'm impressed throwing in the extra work and doing this. It looks really cool. So really good job on that. Very, very good job. All right. So all right, let's move on. Oh, Keith mentioned this too. Is we're just kind of continuing our conversation about the stylus. You don't remember, but you do recall needing to extend the motion more because it was not long enough. So I can't answer that as well. Okay, I can see what you're saying. Yeah, sometimes like the tablets or like the pen tablets. So the Maxon, or not, I'm sorry, not Maxon, but like the Cintiqs, the Wacoms or Wacoms, however you say it. And there's a bunch of off-brand ones now that are very competitive in the field of like pen drawing tablets, which work great, including like I obviously use the iPad. In fact, I have had a Cintiq in the past, a small one, and always had issues with the drivers of it for some reason, but I was also using it on a Mac. And so the iMac, I don't know why, had some issues with it. But for how expensive it was kind of a disappointment dealing with that problem. So yeah, they can cause a lot of unneeded frustrations with those sometimes. All right, Jesus, let's go ahead and play this. Wow, really good job, Jesus. I think overall, I really like the path that Eve takes. You know what's really kind of neat and unintentional is that when you have her flying off, she's flying directly towards the light. So it like her shadow gets massive, and like it's an unintentional thing. I know it's not something you were thinking about. I mean, it could have been something you were thinking about, but to me it says unintentional, but it looks kind of cool. Like I'm into that. I think the head motion is pretty good. I like the hovering is nice. I would just slow everything down slightly because it's a her motion like into frame is a little fast. So I would just at least slow that section down. I think her hovering section looks pretty good. And it might just have to do with the curve and easing the keyframes a little bit. Or just adjusting the path that she's along. But yeah, I think the rotation of her body is nice, especially while she's hovering and she kind of rotates and jerks a little forward. The motion just seems slightly kind of jerky, like just a little bopping from one to the other. And so I would just overall smooth your path out. But I think you've done a really good job here. The lighting looks good. The shadows look good. You've done a good job. And after not being able to figure out how to put the face on her, the face looks awesome too. So you did a good job on here. Jesus. Good color choice. Your frames per second is correct, so you're at 24. Parenting looks good on it. This class is a little more smooth and chill versus our normal classes trying to cram a bunch of information in. It's like an easy one with the reviews. All right, so we have Keith up next. Let me see here. I'm just reading your comment you sent me. Let me play this. First of all, I like the purple that we have going on here. Looks like the lights are affecting that a little bit too, which is cool. Nice. Yeah. I would say that she's a little too jittery on here. So you would want to go in and smooth out the overall path of her, right? The jitteriness is okay, but you don't want a ton of it because you don't want it to look like she's really malfunctioning or anything. You kind of want her motion to look more intentional. Oh, you had an issues with the shadows. I'm not seeing shadows here either, so it might be, was it something that it might have been a setting? Did you also render in the viewport render? Or did you do the, because the materials look more like you did a standard render. I'm gonna keep playing this. I think her face is like really cool. I think you did a little something. I think that what's going on here is the gradient gets really dark close to black on the edges and it kind of fades into the blackness of her face a little bit, but it gives like a variation of her eyes that I really haven't seen anyone else do, like more of like this rounded look. And so I like it. I think it looks cool. My theory is that my light source was too close. So yeah, rewatching it now it does look a little too fast. Yeah. And it's at 30 frames a second. So you're going to want to just interpret the footage when you re-render it and bring it in to into After Effects. Yeah, it does take a really long time to finish. Obviously you're going to get a grade right now and it's not going to be a bad grade. So you don't have to worry about that. But you'll have time, right, to make these changes and re-render it out before our revision round on this, because we are going to be doing a revision round this week, but it doesn't include this project, so you have a little bit of time to work with that. And what I would do is I would render maybe just a couple frames to test it out to see if it's rendering it with shadows. And if it's not rendering it with shadows, then we will go through your project file together and we can try and troubleshoot where the issue is, whether it's in the project settings itself or if it's in the render settings. And so we can work with that. But you got to remember, you also have to turn the shadows on your lights. That could also be another thing for all of you guys as well, is that you're not turning the shadows on when you're bringing the lights in, because a light source actually needs to have the shadow option turned on in it. That's okay. Yeah, no, I think that a lot of people, what happens is a lot of my students will bring in these the render sequences, the PNG sequences into After Effects, and the first thing they forget to do is just right click on the footage and interpret footage, go to main, and change it to 24 FPS. It happens. Half the class will do it in a project that is focused in Cinema 4D solely. So you're obviously not the only one that's done it here. Half the class has done it here. So it's normal. It happens. But other than that, I think that, yeah, I think the timing of it could be slowed down. You could double the timing on here, because right now it's like 10 seconds. You could probably slow it down to 20 seconds. And then what will happen when you do that and you stretch those keyframes out, right? It's going to naturally slow down her motion there. You can see if you like it, and then smooth out that curve, because she's appropriately looking at the look target and she's rotating, which the rotation of her body looks nice compared to like where her head is falling and stuff. Everything just looks a little fast and jittery. So I would just update those things, re-render it out at 24 frames a second for when we have the next revision round. So, but other than that, you did a good job. The light source colors are cool. The materials that you use look good. I like her eyes. I think you did a good job overall. The parenting looks good. I'm also just leaving quick comments in your guys's, like in the comment section of your project here. I'm just, letting you know, like, to watch a live stream today for reviews, comments, and changes. And I just like default that, and then I put your grades grade in, because I to go through and review it in class and then to retype it in there is just a lot. Yeah, you just, that's what revision rounds are for. Is that we're not going to do everything perfect on the first go. It's rarely how it happens. Even if you get a 100% on your grade, there's usually going to be something that I'm going to tell you to change, because even my work, I don't think I've ever turned in work that hasn't had like a revision round on it. It might have one revision round, which is really fast. In my job currently, we have where the client gets 3 opportunities to make changes, right? So you send in the rough cut, which would be something like this. The client reviews it, gives you feedback. You implement that feedback and you have revision 1. And then you give it to the client, they look it over, and they give you more feedback, which you implement in revision 2. You make the changes, you send it back, they look it over. If they have any final changes, right, that's the time when usually in the second revision round, all of their big changes have been completed and they're asking for tiny little details to be changed. And then you implement those changes on that one, and then you render it out as a final and you send it off, right? So they get 1, 2, 3 opportunities to have changes done on their projects, which is normal. And it's always going to happen. You're always going to have critiques happening of your work and changes, and they might be changes that you don't agree with, right? Some changes you're like, why do I have to make that change? I did it for a specific reason. But if the client wants it changed, they want it changed. Most of the time it comes down to like design things, and you have to be able to sometimes explain why you made certain decisions. And that's what I mean by design is all intentional, right? We do things with intention. Things aren't just done, sometimes things happen out of happenstance or just experimentation with stuff, but we fine tune and refine those things. And it takes a while to make those things look polished and really good. But yeah, this is not, this critique times in class are important. And then you can, what's nice is that you see other students work as well. Some students shine particularly with 3D work, some students shine with 2D work, and some students are really good at illustrating and they shine with like hand drawn work, right? Everyone has their own specific niche of animation that they're usually really good at or that they excel at. And that's just how it goes. So some people get a lot of changes they have to implement. Some people have just a few changes they have to implement, but we all have changes to do. None of us are submitting perfect work every time. So, but you guys are doing good. I just want you to know that. Well, um, the most revision rounds I've had to make in one single project. Though, yeah, I've had a couple projects who have had like a ton of revision rounds, and it wasn't on my end or my job's end. It was on the client's end, unfortunately, because the client didn't know what they wanted. And that's a big thing that happens in the field, is that the client's like, I want a video, but they don't know specifically what they want with that video. And so you give them something and they like it, and then they just change their mind like after the revision round, and then they want so many more changes. The thing is, sometimes with my day job, right, we write in 3 revision rounds. If it's a client that we regularly work with and they're not problematic, we'll throw in extra revision rounds for them, to keep that client happy because they're a good client. And there are some clients who are not great clients, and they just will constantly have you going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I worked on a project that should have been done in 8 weeks, and it took over almost an entire year to do, and it should have never taken that long. But they wouldn't return their feedback to us, and it became a nightmarish client situation. And they would make changes and forget the changes that they would ask, and then make conflicting changes the next revision round. And it just got to the point where we eventually had to fire the client because they weren't, we have a shot clock for a project that says the project's going to be completed with this amount of time. It went over that. It was going over budget. We weren't going to do that anymore. They were trying to get a bunch of free work, and we were just like, no, we can't. We're cleaning our hands of it. Here's what we have done for you so far. And those are always hard situations to have to end up in, right? No one wants to end up in that situation, but it happens. And so knowing when to call the shot, like call it quits, is really important. I think that we let that client work with us way too long, because by the end of the project, it was just so beyond what we had initially talked about in the scope of what the project would be, that it just became a mess. And it wasn't on my end, it was on the client's end, unfortunately. And they got kind of what they asked for, which, we had explained different design choices and reasons we were doing stuff, but they just didn't want to trust in us. And the thing is we were the professionals that do this work daily, right? And so some people just have to have too much control in it, and can't relinquish that control to trust us to do our jobs. And it's just unfortunate. But if you can imagine, right, if a project takes only 8 weeks with 3 revision rounds, how many revisions they put us through. It was just a nightmare. Keith said that's like that for every field commission, art, illustration, and animation. It's just part of the career. It is true. Yep. You just end up getting those clients. And it's a learning experience, right? Because then when you go to work, especially if you're freelancing and working on your own, as soon as you start to see those red flags pop up, you can prepare yourself in different ways, right? And that's why it's important, I think, to have like a contract written for you if you're going to do freelance work on your own, right? Because you want to have a contract that states stuff that you will like allow and what you're going to hand over and things like that. It's also important to read contracts when you get them from a company that's like, hey, because sometimes they'll tell you they want to own your work. And you, if you're freelancing, own those files, right? Unless you specifically tell them that the files come with the project. Um, then, at that point they own that. But if not, you own those working files. And so you can decide to sell those working files if you want to. You don't have to sell those files. You can let them know, hey, that's not part of my contract. That's not something that I allow. So reading things over is really important when you go to do that. I think that, I think it would be beneficial to take a few business classes if you ever plan to do animation on your own and go the freelance route, because you also have to know a lot about the business side, including how to pay your taxes appropriately on the stuff, the money, the income that you're making. So knowing how much money you have to put aside for your taxes. And that includes state and federal taxes. And no one wants to do that. We're freaking creative people. We don't like that. And if you do, kudos to you, but I don't like it. And then you also have to get your own clients. So it's a lot more work that you're putting into it, but on the scale of balance, right? You have more work that you're putting in on the back end, but also you get that freedom of creating your own schedule and doing your own stuff. So there's like pros and cons to both working for someone and working for yourself, but there's, things you want to start thinking about, especially when you start either applying for these jobs or going to work on your own, is the clients that you end up working with. But you will get bad clients. So don't expect everything to be rainbow clients where they're just unicorns and they're perfect every time. Those are very rare. You'll learn to appreciate the clients who are straight to the point. They might control a couple things of it, but other than that, they're pretty responsive, and they're willing to collaborate together, because collaboration is really important, and they're willing to give and take as long as as well as you're willing to give and take. But yeah, it comes with the career. No one's ever super happy all the time about it, and you'll get those people, but like I said, it's a learning experience. So really good job on this, Keith. Really good job. I'm very proud of you guys for all the work you've been putting in. Let's go to Lena's. Lena, where is it here? 24 frames a second. Looks good there. Loving that deep blue. Let's go ahead. Ooh, we've got like a really cool kind of aqua colored light happening. Nice shadows. Cool. I love the timing. Nice. That very smooth. And this is like the timing that we were talking about when we were looking at your project, Keith, is like this kind of smooth floating motion into place, smooth hovering. Let her kind of air it out and look for a second, because she's right curious. We want to kind of think of maybe what's happening in her mind. She could be on the cappuccino or on the coffee, and maybe she is flying around like she's cracked out, right? And it's just, who knows? But what we're looking for in this is like more of a curiosity, right? So she's staring at something, she's flying in, she's seeing it, she's watching it, it's moving, and then she follows along with it, kind of like a cat but the cats obviously move faster, right? So if you're going to do that, that's okay, but everything has to be intentional. And so I think the hovering's good. It kind of looks like she's looking maybe into her hands for a second, and then sees something and then flies off in that direction. I think that you really did a good job overall here, Lena. I like the lighting. I like the material on the ground. I've got a little friend visiting me right now. Come here, Minerva. You want to say hello? Hello. She says hello from the ground. She might get up on my desk in the back or jump up here. But I would say the only thing that I would do in this situation, right? I like the way she looks. I think in this part right here, she bends back a little bit far, and that's where her head kind of disconnects a little bit from her body. So I would update that rotation a little bit so it's not such an intense rotation. I think the looking of the hands is cool, but when she flies off and her hands are straight, that might not make as much sense unless she were chasing something specifically that came into the scene. And so maybe what she does, right, is that she looks in her hands, maybe she moves one up a little bit, looks into that, puts her hands down, sees the object, and then goes after it with her hands, maybe one hand out or something like that. But I think this looks a little like maybe she's looking at her little hands a little bit more. I think that happens. This thing here doesn't happen for a reason unless she's chasing something specific. And when she's looking into her hands, it makes me think that she's looking at something in her hands. And then all of a sudden she looks up towards the thing and then runs at it. I mean, that could make sense, right? But I think it would make the motion would make more sense if she was maybe just looking at her hands a little bit. Maybe her hands go down and then she continues looking. She sees the thing and then goes after it. I think that would make a little bit more sense on like what the action is that's happening. Does that kind of make sense to you, Lena? But other than that, this is really good. I would fix the rotation a little bit. I like the jittering, like the amount of jitter you have on hers is soft, and the hovering looks really good. Like she's in that space for an appropriate amount of time. The amount of movement that she has is appropriate. Her speed is appropriate. So overall, you've done a really, really good job here. But when I start to go through and nitpick the things, those are the things that I see. Do you have any questions about that? Your parenting looks really good here, though. Hold on, Lena. I'll answer your question here in just a second. You asked, so she looks at her hands briefly, puts the hands down, and then takes off with her hands tilted back. Yeah, you could do that. You could also do, right? If you want to get, just remember, the more we start adding, right, that stuff can get critiqued too, right? So maybe she's looking at her hands. This would be the easier thing, is that she's looking at her hands. She puts her hands down. She sees the object again, and then it moves and she goes after it. I think that would make sense. She could also be looking at her hands, and maybe her hands kind of go down. She sees the thing, and then she's maybe points at it and goes off, right? That could add a little bit more of a critique, though. So I'll let you choose which one you do. But I like the idea of the hands, adding more of the hand animation in. So I think that's perfect, right? I'm not saying to leave that out. I like it. I just think the intention of what she's doing has to be there. So you have those two options. You can do the one where she looks at her hands briefly, maybe puts her hands down, sees the object, it moves, and she goes after it. Or she's looking at her hands, kind of looks up, sees the object, maybe points at it, and flies off in the direction. It's kind of similar to what you have here, but a little bit more of that added, that time in between when she's looking at her hands, she looks up, she sees the object, and then maybe she's reaching towards the object as she's going towards it. Kind of similar to what you did here as well. So you can choose either one. Sweet. Awesome. I'm happy. Well, you guys really did a great job on this. All right. The Eve project is done and graded. And I just wanted to get these done for you guys and these reviews of these projects in. Let me go back quickly. And then we're going to talk about the Monarch butterfly ones. You guys still have some time to obviously send these in tonight. If you guys want to have feedback in on your projects, I would get them in like on late projects and stuff. Nakara, I know I told you like by midnight tonight. That would be nice, but midnight, how about let's make it midnight tomorrow night. If you guys want feedback in on that in time to put the feedback into your revision rounds for your other projects, I think midnight tomorrow night is a good time for you guys to get me those late projects so that I can grade them. And put the grades in your original project, and then you'll have the feedback to implement into your revision round. And that way you're not getting docked points for anything that was missing that I'm first seeing, right? Because it's better to turn in something than nothing at all. So just remember that. All right, let me see here. The Eve one. What did I have here? Okay, that's due until tonight. And then let me go back into here and we're going to go over these Monarch butterfly ones. Did someone turn it in? Sweet. Jasmine just turned hers in too. Let me put this one. Cool. This one goes into the Eve bot one. So let me review that one first, Jasmine. And then... Did I not get to see yours? Because it says it was turned in. Oh yeah, just when class started. Okay, let me find yours here. Sweet, let's go over this. All right, good start here. I think that the initial thing that I'm seeing the reflection on here. So making sure that you're turning on those shadows, right? When you're on your lights, making sure that the shadows are turned on the lights, and then also double checking that you have shadows marked in both your render settings and in your project settings. Now, just to see in your viewport if you want to, because I believe this looks like a viewport render, because I'm not really seeing a lot of reflections happening in her material that you have on here. It could be the material. I do see the colored lights on here, which is really cool. And so I would just kind of update that as far as like your scene goes, right? As far as the animation goes, I really like the speed and timing of Eve as she comes in. As she flies in, she's hovering around. Perfect amount of time. She sees something and she flies off. It looks like her head is following a look target, which is perfect. It moves, she looks, and then she follows. There's a little bit of extra time here that you don't have to have rendered out. So once she's off screen, you can cut all of this extra time. That's okay. You don't have to have that there. Now, the other thing I would say is you want to kind of center her a little bit further into frame. So if moving all of those keyframes is too much work, you can also just rotate your camera a little bit. And that also goes back to Giselle's. Because that was the same feedback I had for Giselle, as well as to kind of center Eve a little bit more. So maybe you just want to rotate your camera a little bit. I think that would be the easiest option. As far as her animation of everything else goes, the arms kind of move back a little bit too early before she starts to shoot off screen. So I would probably wait to move the arms back until right about there, where she like starts to head in that direction, because her arms will follow. So just adjust the timing of the keyframes of her arm animation right there, and then you should be all set, because I like that her her arms go flying back. You could even rotate her body just slightly more if you wanted to. But other than that, this is a really good start on this as well. If you have the opportunity to render it in the physical render or the standard render, that would be great because then we get all those nice highlights and stuff like that. But really good start on this, Jasmine. Very good start. The parenting looks good as well. Let's see your, the other thing. Let's see your keyframe. What is it? 24 frames a second. Nailed it. Really good job. All right. Cool. See, I see live when they're coming in, so I can tell if you guys are submitting them while I'm doing the review. All right, the Monarch butterfly. Let's go to this one. So as far as the Monarch butterfly rubric goes, let's kind of go over that to see how I'm going to grade it, right? So I sectioned this rubric out by scenes because there's 3 different scenes in here. Plus there's going to be the title, or I'm sorry, not the title, the credits. Let me rephrase that, the credits. So let's kind of review these butterfly scene criteria for each one, and then we'll talk about the, the points. I'll obviously go over that too. So scene 1 is a butterfly icon scene. The icon of the butterfly is going to scale into the frame. I want to see that the icon is centered in the scene and not offset. The icon rests to a stop in position for a moment and then scales up and becomes a transition. That scale becomes a transition into the next scene. The entire time, the wings of the butterfly have to be flapping on the correct axis, and all of the motion, I want to see that it's eased, and there should be no linear keyframes in this, right? So from the scaling of the icon in and out of scene to the butterfly wings flapping, I want to see that those keyframes are easing. Now, the scene 2, the butterfly map or the butterfly scene over the map, I want to see 3 butterfly icons that should be animated along a path. There should be a line that highlights the path behind the butterfly icon, like I showed you guys with the trim path, right? The wings of the butterfly should be flapping on the appropriate axis again. If you did this correctly in scene 1, it should automatically work for scene 2. Using masking and animation of a shape to transition to the next scene. So we're going to use that transition, that circular transition, to move to the next scene. I also want to see that all of the motion in here is eased as well, and there should be no linear keyframes. 25 points. So 25 points per scene, right? The kaleidoscope of butterflies. I want to see a side view of the butterflies that are going to be used in this scene. There should be a lot of butterflies that vary in both scale and timing and position, right? They shouldn't be, a whole mass of them shouldn't be moving over at the same exact time, and they all end at the same time, right? They're all floating through air in a general group, but everyone's moving kind of at their own pace and through there. So there should be variation of that, right? There should be a landscape scene in the background. Motion should be applied to some of those background elements. So like the clouds, the grass, any kind of parallaxing or whatever. All of the motion is eased, and there should be no linear keyframes. Again, 25 points. Audio. All of the audio is synced up to the animation over the appropriate scenes. There's both a voiceover and music that is added. The music is turned down as to not compete with the voiceover, so the music shouldn't be super loud. And the music fades in as well as fades out of the beginning and end of the video. And you do that, animating the decibels, right? As far as design goes, the color palette of the entire scene is cohesive, and the landscape scene has thought and intention integrated into the design, and you're not just throwing a bunch of crap in there. There is an end scene with credits, and the typography on the screen follows the rules of hierarchy, right? And that's going to be worth 5 points. And then finally, formatted 24 frames a second, 1920, 1080. So, as long as you guys hit all those marks, you'll get good grades, right? So let's go over Jade's. Any questions before I start reviewing this of the Monarch? Actually, Keith, I have a question for you because you mentioned in Slack that you had trouble playing a video. Which one was it? And what kind of problems did you have coming up when you were trying to play whatever video it was? Ahmed, yes, I do interact with the chat, but I mean, you can ask questions, but it's like a class, a college course. And so I focus on my students. I focus on my students' questions first. The assembly one, okay. The last video at the bottom of the, was it just not playing for you? Because I'm curious if it was taken off of YouTube. It just says unavailable. Okay, so it must have been taken off. Okay, so I will remove that. Were you able to, let's see, you did. So you were able to put everything together, correct? Yeah, it just doesn't exist. Okay. I'm sorry about that, you guys. Thank you for telling me, though, because now I can remove it from the module. Okay, so knowing that you had to cobble it up on your own is important for me. We did go over it, how to assemble everything. The last class that we had, Thursday before Halloween. And so I would suggest kind of rewatching those sections, and I go over how to do the transitions for each one, but I don't do it separately in its own video. It's kind of throughout the course. So you can just go through there. I don't know if Belle's already put in markers on the like different chapters in the video. She might have done that. If she hasn't done it, then you might just kind of have to scrub through to look. But I talk about like more assembling it in that one as well. Let's see. Putting it all together, adding transitions, credits, and a lesson about working with the audio. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just clicked on it and it did that. I'm going to remove that. All right, cool. All right, so let's start reviewing Jade's work now that we got the questions out of the way. Thank you for answering that stuff for me, Keith. It helped me to like update the project and stuff moving forward. So here is Jade's.
Every winter, monarch butterfly.
Actually, let me stop the background audio. There we go. Rewind this and we'll start over.
Every winter, monarch butterflies migrate from North America to Latin America. Monarchs use a combination of air currents and thermals to travel thousands of miles.
All right, nice. Really good start on this, Jade.
Every winter, monarch butterflies migrate.
Yeah, no worries about that, Keith. Yeah, great start on this, Jade. I think that we're gonna go through scene by scene and kind of break each one down. But overall, it looks really good. Just a couple issues maybe on timing of that last scene, and then a couple other things through here. But overall, I can see all the work you put into it, and it was great. The first thing I want to let you know is it is not, the icon never went down to 0% fully. And the reason is because I can see this tiny, if I fit this up here, tiny little white dot here, which is the little icon showing. And so just make sure that you scale it all the way down to 0, because whenever someone turns a video on, right, they double click on it on their computer to start playing it, it's going to show up with like a blank screen. There's going to be a blank screen right away, or whatever it starts with, right? So if you don't start the video off black, it's going to start off with however it looks right at the very beginning. And this first frame, I can see it's not quite at 0%. So you want to make sure that scale is all the way down. But when
Every
it zooms
winter,
in here, I like the speed that it scales up to. And I think it has a little bit of a bounce. Let's replay that.
every winter,
Yeah, it's got a nice little bounce there. The
monarch
flapping of the
butterflies
wings look
migrate
good.
from North America to Latin America.
It looks really nice moving down
Monarchs-
here. The other thing I wanted to point out, that as the monarch butterfly icons are moving down screen, is that they're continuing to move when the transition happens. It's something that I mentioned last class that I wanted to see, and that you did a really good job on that, making sure that they were still moving down while they were animating, or while the transition happened. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. So a really good job on that. I would say that the color that you have throughout the video is fairly consistent, right? You have the same background color here as you do here. I'm not particularly fond of like this fuchsia color that's around the icon, because I think it doesn't really fit in with the color palette as much, versus like this nice soft kind of salmony pink that fits in, like looks like a softer version of this red, right? And so maybe you pick a different color to go around that, and maybe it's the orange that we see here. This color here, your gradient that you have in the background, if you didn't do it, I would do this. I would make sure that the dark part of the gradient is this dark red, and then maybe the lighter part of the gradient is this light kind of salmon color that you have here for your lines. And I think that would look really good with the maybe the line around the, like the outline around the circle icon. You could do like a darker blue than this blue, and I think that would be a little bit more cohesive. But when this flies in, I think you've done a really good job with the wing flappings in the first
monarch butterfly
2 scenes. Like the
to Latin
timing's really
America.
good.
Monarchs use a combination of air currents and thermals to travel thousands of
I like this here. I think that there could be some variation in the size of the butterflies, and you could add a few more into here. The variation will sell like perspective of where those butterflies are in space. So it'll kind of, if they're scaled smaller, it's going to look like a couple of them are further back and the bigger ones are closer to the screen, right? Just like a little trick of the trade. The other thing I would do is maybe smooth out your path animations, because at a certain part
of air currents and
there's like this kind of jerky motion right there. I would smooth that out a little bit, and speed up the wing flapping more, because the wings kind of flap a little too slow for a butterfly floating through the air, right? Like a butterfly is floating through the air, their wings are flapping like this. So it's a faster beat versus when it lands on a flower, right? And the wings kind of slowly open and close and just kind of rotate, right? It's slower like this, versus when they're taking off to fly, they have to beat. Their wings have to flap fast enough for them to fly through the air. So I think really right here, I would like to just see the faster wing flaps, and then just adjusting a couple of those paths so they're not so jerky, and then also varying the size of the butterflies. The other thing I would like to see is maybe a couple other elements in the background here. I know I didn't get time to show you guys all of those elements in our last class, but throwing in like maybe a setting sun, or possibly the clouds in the background. Or maybe some lines that you guys create inside of Adobe Animate that are wind, right? Some following lines that look like wind. That would be cool as well. But there needs to be just maybe something else in here animated. Clouds would be the easiest, right? Because they're just going to move in one direction really slow and almost linear because they're never gonna stop. They're gonna just keep animating. So that would be a linear animation. But other than that, I think that everything looks like it's eased.
And thermals to travel thousands of miles.
And the only other thing is that when that music starts there after the voiceover ends is when I would introduce your credits. So it's blank here for too long. The credits should start more here right when the audio stops. So that's the other change I would make. Other than that, this is a really good start to the video. And you did it at 24 frames a second, which looks great. Let's go to Lena's 24 frames a second. Really good job there, Lena. All right, let's see here. Also, by the way, I thought your audio sounded really good. Let me hear if you got that fade in and fade out happening.
Every winter, monarch butterflies migrate.
Yeah. Yeah, the music fades out too quickly. You want the music to still be happening over the credits. And then once your name is on screen long enough, then you'll take the music down. You'll animate that audio down. But you did animate it fading in and out. So really just moving this credit scene up further to right when you could even start fading it in right now when this last butterfly is on scene. And that would be just fine. It would look really good. So let's see here. All right, now we're going to go to Lena. All right, let's play yours, Lena.
Every winter, monarch butterflies migrate from North America to Latin America. Monarchs use a combination of air currents and thermals to travel thousands of miles.
Very cute.
Every winter.
Very cool. First of all, the illustration style of your butterfly and your background here are great. Adding all that texture in is really lovely. Obviously, I'm going to tell you I want to see a little bit of animation into the like sun and stuff like that. I think you could do it. And in fact, I have something else that we'll talk about. But let's break down the scenes starting with the first one and then moving forward. But overall, really stellar job on this, Lena, and I'm really into the style that you have incorporated into here of your butterfly.
Every winter, monarch butterfly.
I think that the wing flapping looks really good. It's obviously eased, as well as the scaling in of the icon. It looks really nice. You got that little pop that happens and then settles down. The only other thing that I see happening here is like your shadows getting cut off a little bit, and so I think it might have to do with the size of the composition. You just might have to make the butterfly composition a little bit bigger. And then you might not have this issue because what's happening is this shadow. Did you do the effect where you added a drop shadow, or did you do the effect where I showed adding, like duplicating the wings, turning them black with the fill, and then kind of fading it out and softening it with the blur? Which one did you end up doing? Hold on one second. I'm just going to mute my mic for a minute. You did the long version shadow, so where you duplicated the wings and added the fill and all that kind of stuff. Okay, yeah. So all you have to do is just Control K, go into your composition settings and of just the butterfly one and just increase the base of it. I guess that would be the one thing I would try and see if that works. Kind of similar to the issue with the robot arm like extending over the like right? Because like our composition is a certain size, and if the object extends over the top of it, then it's going to get cut off, especially if it extends beyond what our composition is. And so the option that we have, especially when that composition is nested into a pre-comp, is to take the original comp with the butterfly and just make it bigger. It's not going to affect anything um within the other compositions that pre-comp is in, except it's just going to give that expansion so that we'll see that stuff. So you don't get this like hard line cutoff that happens when the composition might be a little too small and this is maybe towards the bottom. And the problem is because when you turn it into a 3D layer, it does that. And so you just kind of have to think, do I have to compensate it by maybe making my composition bigger? A lot of comp type words that are happening there, but I hope that makes sense. So let me know if you need like more elaborate kind of discussion of that. The other thing that I noticed, so in the butterfly comp, I would make it 19, yes, correct. 1980 by, or 1920. I'm sorry, my bad. 1920 by 2000 would be fine. Extending that y-axis right there should help. If it doesn't help, just shoot me a message and let me know and we can look at it and troubleshoot it that way, because it might just be how much you're increasing the blur to and it's getting cut off. And I think that might be the problem. The other thing that I noticed, and it's a very tiny thing and it could have just got shuffled, is that right up here, there's a tiny little black bar that reaches across the top of the video. All you have to do here is just take this background and either nudge it up, right? Or increase the size of it. You can just, if you just increase the scale of the background, it'll be fine. You won't have that issue.
Winter.
But the animation, the illustration style, love it. Beautiful.
Monarch butterflies
The transition of it scaling up and fading looks fantastic.
migrate
I also
from
really
North
like
America
this part
to
right
Latin
here.
America. Monarchs use a combination.
I would consider, to make it a little more cohesive, is changing the color of your United States map to one of the reds here. It's okay if the United States map isn't blue. It doesn't have to be blue. You can just go into, I had done it by going into the contents, like dropping the contents tabs down in the layer. And then what you'll want to do is you'll want to find the ones that are not the United States, like the outline and the background and stuff. Like, you know how I turn the background off? The same way that I turn the background off, just find all the states, shift click and hold all of them. And then you can, if they're all the same color, then it will show that color up here in like your area where it gives you the option to change the fill color or the stroke color. If you have something selected that is a different color, right, it'll show up as a question mark. So you know you don't have all of the states selected. And you can do that in like groups of 10. It might be easier to do it that way. You can also quickly, but it won't, the problem with this method is if you do it, it's not going to show your state lines, and you really want to show like at least the countries lines, like separating Canada from the US to Mexico. I mean, I guess it's not that big of a deal, but if you take the fill, if you go into the fill effects and presets and just apply that to the United States map layer and then change it to one of these colors, I think that would be great. But because I love the color combination that you have going on here, I'm really into it. So I think if you just pull that into the map scene, it's going to pop so much more and it's going to be really cohesive, because this blue that it is by default is really kind of a little bit jarring. It just doesn't mesh with the really pretty palette that you've actually coordinated in the next scene. The other thing is also just bump up this background right here. So I would be able to change 10 group layers at a time for the map. Yeah, like so you know how if there you have a shape, let me do this right now. Let me add a composition. 1920 1080 24 frames 10 seconds. Great. So if I have a shape, let's say this is the United States and it's got a fill color here. And you also have other shapes on here that are the same color. And then you have maybe something else here, some more shapes, and this is all on the same layer that are a different color, right? So you have, like in the United States map, you've got the white lines and you've got the blue states. So just kind of think of it that way, right? So when you drop down, you're going to have like this would say US map, or it's not the US map, it's North America. Let me get that correct. Because we're including awesome countries like Mexico and Canada in there. So it's not just about the US. But North America, the North American continent layer, you're going to drop this down and drop down the contents table. And then you're going to have all of these things that are just going to be shape 1, shape 2, something like that. Because they're not all going to be labeled. They're going to have some stupid name on here that's not going to allow you to know which one it is. All you got to do is kind of come in here and start like shying the layers and being like, okay, so right now I marked off all of my blue layers right there. So I'm like, oh, well, all of these are the white outline that happens. So I don't want to change those ones. I want to grab all the other ones. And when you do that, when you select them all, you can see right here, I've got all the orange ones selected, that if I go up to the fill, I can grab this and change them all at one time, right? So instead of like that orange, they're the pink now. And if for some reason I accidentally have part of that white outline selected in here, like let's say I selected all of these, you're not going to see the correct fill color up here. You're going to see a question mark in the area. And so that's how you're going to know that you don't have the correct shape selected, or you've got something additional added in there that you don't want. And that's why I'm saying it's easier to work in like groups of 10 where you're just like, okay, I select those, I'm going to select them all, I'm going to shut them all off. And what did that shut off? And then you're like, oh, well, that's including some of it's like all the states. Okay, great. I can change that color. And then you'll go and you'll select more. And then you might turn these ones on and turn these ones off. And then you'll be like, oh, well, I've obviously got most of them, but I still am missing 2 pink ones, which must be here. And if you grab them, what you can also notice is that it outlines whatever it's grabbing here as well. So it's kind of got its own little bounding box around the shape, and that's how you can tell which ones you're selecting in there. Then I would shut that off, and then I'd be like, okay, now I can go in and change these other colors. Does that make more sense? And that's how you can just kind of quickly, you can update it that way. Or, like I said, what you could do, you have to make sure you turn them back on, by the way, because if their little eye icon is shut off, then part of your illustration is not going to show up. Or like I said, what you could do is you can take the fill, generate fill, and you can drop it on that layer. But then, like I said, it's going to color everything on that layer and not just the states, right? It's going to color those lines too. So it's going to kind of more look like a big old blob versus an image where it's separated out. Everything's because I mean, look, you have the in Canada, you have the territories up here, and then you have the states inside of both the US and Mexico. Cool. Sweet. Cool. And so as long as you've used the AI version, it won't work with the PNG version. Let me just clarify that right now. Because the PNG version doesn't have those separate layers in there. But the Illustrator version will. So as long as you're using that, you should be able to do that. But I love
Monarchs use a
this.
combination
Transition is great. Added that blur. You've got the variation of the butterflies.
of air
I think you could add just a couple more tailing little butterflies
currents
here
and thermals
because this little guy is lovely. This just makes me
to
so
travel
happy
thousands of miles.
because he like flies off at the end, like he's following everyone, kind of like he's almost like the leader, like making sure everyone gets through. I would add a couple more small little trailing butterflies, and then as those ones are almost off screen, then he takes off and then he goes behind. Cool, awesome. I'm happy to hear you use the Illustrator map, so that'll work out for you. But I just absolutely think that is smart, smart animation right there, right? And
to travel thousands of miles.
the flight path looks great. Did you just animate the position, or did you use or did you use kind of like the switcheroo, the switching of the layers for that animation, just so the class kind of knows how you did it. And then here I would just add, like, again, you can add like the wind things, or maybe the sun is setting, so the position of the sun is going down. Again, if it's already moving when we see the scene, it should be the linear things, right? If it's going off screen, or if it's moving during that transition, because the sun should be like kind of slowly setting. It's a very slow motion, right? You could also use Adobe Animate to draw some little waves here if you wanted to do that. Just some options for you if you want to mess around with it. Yeah, see? So a little bit of a trick there. You had to make a new pre-comp, so you had to use a separate pre-comp that you just probably duplicated and just changed the flapping of the wings.
Miles.
Correct?
And thermals to travel thousands of miles.
I think that you did a really good job there, and it looks very smooth, and you should be proud of yourself for that. So killer job on this. I think that you can introduce this, like, you don't want this to be from about here to, so you've got a whole second where it's just the scene. And you can move up your credits here for that. Every time I eased the butterfly motion, it was jerky. Like the butterfly paused in midair, so I had to do some linear keyframes. How would you solve this problem? Where was this issue at? When the butterfly was... Which part? Every time you ease the butterfly's motion, it was jerky, like the butterfly paused in midair. You're not talking about this part, right?
Currents and thermals to travel thousands of miles.
I think that looks nice. I think that looks appropriate to the...
Combination of air currents and
that adding that motion blur, by the way, on it looks really nice. So you guys want to remember to add motion blur to your wing flaps as well. In all the butterfly paths, you had to change it to linear. Oh, like as they were flying across the screen. And that's okay because the butterflies are moving. It would have to be you updating the shape of the path in order to mitigate that problem, I would believe, instead of
air currents and thermals.
I think they look good. I didn't even see that.
Monarchs use a combination.
Oh, I kind of see that one. Maybe not. No, he swoops off screen. It looks cool.
Use a combination of air currents and thermals.
I think what you did is cool. I don't see the problem that you're... I don't see that issue.
Monarchs use a combination of air currents
here. I think that the amount of, like, jerking that happens of the butterfly is fine based on how butterfly flight patterns are, because they kind of do that. Yeah, why don't you do that in the next question for the next participation question, which is going to be on the 6th anyway. So next Monday is when they're due. Ask that question on there and just show me, kind of walk through and show me where the issue is, and then we'll solve that for you. We'll get that problem fixed. And I'll mess around with some things and see if I can duplicate that issue as well. Yeah. The thing is, right, like if it's going from off screen to off screen, like we're not easing the motion necessarily of the butterfly's wing flaps are eased, but because remember when I was talking about easing things that go from off screen to on screen or on screen to off screen, that those off screen keyframes they shouldn't necessarily be eased, right? So if you have a car that you have from here driving on scene and he's going to stop at a stoplight, right? He's going to come in at his speed. He's going to slow down up to the stop. And then before he leaves the stop light, it's going to turn green. He's going to accelerate in, and then he's going to be going the same speed off here. And so easing these keyframes at the beginning or at the very end here would make it look like they're slowing down. And when we want them, especially like, we want this one to be like he's going regular speed. He comes in on screen going that regular speed and then slows down into the stop. So here we want him to be going at his normal speed. So that's why this keyframe can be linear. Same with the one off screen, right? We don't want him to, why would he speed up and then slow down? He would just be speeding up to keep going. And so that's why this end keyframe would be a linear keyframe. And because you have your butterfly starting off screen and ending off screen, they're going to be going the same speed. So that doesn't necessarily have to be eased. What has to be eased is the flapping of the butterfly wings. Does that make more sense to you? You can still ease keyframes if it's from off screen to on screen, but just understand the concept of why you would not do that versus why you would do that.
Of air currents and thermals to travel thousands
So yeah, I would just add some more into this one. Maybe add some little background
of
animations.
miles.
And then when he's done saying
To travel thousands
of miles is when you should be introducing your... Okay, cool. I'm happy you understand that more now. Keith, do you kind of understand where I was going with that? What I was talking about? And then Lena, right here, when he's done saying thousands of miles, is where you can introduce your credit scene. And you can have this one happening here, which is lovely. Like I said, by the way, this is chef's kiss, touch on that.
Every winter, Monarch...
And then just fade in and fade out the audio. The audio fades out. It must fade in a little bit, no?
Every winter, Monarch...
It's okay if you don't put the fade in on the beginning because I know how it fades into the audio. But just the fade out is nice. So really good job. Really, really good job. I didn't think the audio competed at all. And I think you're at 24 frames a second. Cool. Yeah, just knowing like, hey, when should I ease this? When should I not ease this, right? By the way, Keith, with this one, you can see kind of how we did it, like those transitions to put them together, right? So the scaling of that one scene and the opacity change that happens here to reveal the second scene. And then what we have here as the masking of that circle animation that we do, which will reveal our next scene. So when you're scrubbing through that other video to try and put them together, you'll see what I'm talking about. Let's go to next one is Tristan. All right.
Every winter, monarch butterflies migrate from North America to Latin America. Monarchs use a combination of air currents and thermals to travel thousands of miles.
Nice. Good start on here, Tristan. Let's go through and break this down scene by scene. I like this kind of corally pinkish color, which is really nice. I'm into that. I like the butterfly, but it is a monarch butterfly, right? So it needs to be the color of a monarch. If it were just talking about butterflies in general, I wouldn't care, right? But this is specific to a monarch butterfly, and so we want it to look like a monarch. Unless there are there blue monarch butterflies? Is there something I don't know? Let me look it up. I think they're only orange butterfly colors. Yes, so they are only orange. There are different variations of monarch butterflies, but they're all orange. So you're going to have to change the color of that. I know that's a bummer because this blue looks really pretty with this, with the color of your background and stuff, but we definitely need to update that. The other thing that I'm noticing is the wing flapping isn't happening from the appropriate spot. So you have to update where your anchor points are on this. And then we want to add like maybe a little, you got the little shadow on there, which looks cool. Yeah, just updating the anchor point because it looks like the wings aren't flapping. The anchor point should be here by the body, right? Because that's where the wing flap happens. So you want to make sure your parenting is appropriate there. And then swinging into the scene.
Monarch butterflies migrate from North America to Latin America.
That looks really nice. They continue. Once you fix the flapping and the colors of the butterfly in this scene, it will update into this scene. So it won't be as much work that you have to do. As far as this
Monarch
section
butterflies
goes,
migrate.
It looks really good. I like the trailing.
From North America to Latin America.
That looks good there. And I appreciate that it's continuing to move when the transition happens here. Now this one, I would obviously add some more detail into the background here. This is kind of what I did because of the short time that we had in class, but I would spend some more time creating more detailed background and then having at least one other element in that background animating, whether it's the clouds, whether it's the sun, whether you have some leaves floating by, right? Because you can animate leaves the same way you would do the butterflies along a path. And the other thing is I would want to see some variation in the sizes of your butterflies as they're coming on screen.
Monarchs use a
and that way, because you could add a few more butterflies as well to add like that it's a bigger kind of group of butterflies. But this size variation is going to add some interest to that. And then also color, you got to change the color of the monarch. And then finally the motion blur. Let's add some of that onto their wings.
Of air currents and
it looks like they're, and then these ones you're also going to want to update the, like this wing flaps down a little far. So you might just want to make it not such a dramatic flap at that point.
Of air currents and thermals to travel thousands.
As far as the audio goes, it's not synced up to the video.
Every winter, monarch butterflies migrate from North America to Latin America.
That's perfect. So you have this first section done. You want to add...
Monarchs use a combination of air currents and thermals to travel thousands of miles.
So right here is when that scene should end. So you're going to need to add just more butterflies into there. And then once you add some variation of stuff into your background, it'll look a little bit more appropriate. And then when, like I said, once he's done saying that VO is when you're going to want to, you can fade that scene into view with your name on credits on it. Also, just on the side here, you just need to tap over that this green background. I would make this green background also that coral color because this green kind of comes out of nowhere. It's not throughout the rest of the video. If it were through the video, maybe it's the outline around the bubble here that you use, I wouldn't mind it, but it's just kind of out of place compared to everything else. So I would just update that as well. Other than that, really good start on there. And then the final thing is that you're at 30 frames a second and we just want to be at 24 frames a second. But really good start. All right. Let me do this. All right. The next one that we have is Jesus. Let's go over Jesus's project. All right. So again, this is like a common thing. So when you guys are working, in your main comp, you want to make sure that you're pulled back, right? You're either fit or fit to screen, or that you're further back in your composition so that you have all this blank space around it so that you can see when something like this is going to happen. Because if you're pushed into your composition, if you're zoomed in like this, you're not going to see all that. It's going to look like it's filling up the entire area when in fact it's not. You still have this, ooh, sorry, hiccup. You still have this little bar up here. And so we just want to mitigate that by making sure that we're pulled out and that this is fully centered. And just scale it, right? That'll fix that. I'm going to play this.
Every winter, monarch butterflies migrate from North America to Latin America. Monarchs use a combination of air currents and thermals to travel thousands of miles.
Really good job. Really good start on here, Jesus. You're the first one that I've seen to use the parallax effect. So cool. Points for kudos for that, you know. The first thing that I notice is that the butterfly is scaling in separate to the circle, and the butterfly and the circle have to be in the same. So what you could do is if you're animating the circle, you're just going to once you're going to parent the butterfly to the circle, right? So that the butterfly is going to scale in at the same size. Because right now you're animating both the scale of the butterfly and the circle, and it just has to be one. So use that parenting technique in order to mitigate that problem. And then you're going to kind of want that pop to happen. So where the bubble gets big and then kind of settles down. I go over that in the class that I taught last Thursday. So you'll want to rewatch that. Let me zoom back in here.
Winter, monarch butterflies.
And then the scale happens kind of fast here as well. A little too fast. So you're going to want to just slow that down slightly.
Winter, monarch butterflies.
The butterfly wing flaps look good.
Monarch butterfly.
They're linear keyframes though. So you're going to want to make sure that those keyframes are eased. You might just have to, if they are eased, then just adjust your curves. But to me, it looks linear.
Monarch butterflies migrate from North America to Latin America.
That's not bad. I would just change the background color here so it's not this deep gray because it's a little dark. And also you're going to have to move it up, right? Because right here. But because the gray color is very similar to the greens here as far as saturation goes, it's a little bit harder to see. So what you could do is one of two things. You can change the color of the background, right, to a lighter gray, and that will help the United States pop out more. It'll pull each other back so they're not all blue. Thing that you could do is just change the color. And then as far as the animation of the icons go,
Migrate from North America to Latin America.
That looks great. They're still animating even when the transition happens, so good job. I see you use a square transition, which is cool. Whatever, yeah, I'll allow it. You've got the clouds floating from one side to another. That's great. The variation in size of the butterflies is there. You've got that. They really float really well, which is beautiful. I don't think there's any changes that you need there. Also, the timing of their flapping wings is good. This kind of, I don't know if it's the position of the wings. It's because you bring the rotation all the way down. like at a 90-degree angle. And I might not do that because it kind of looks a little funny at some spots. Like it's kind of like breaking the wings. So I would just maybe increase the angle of those so they're not fully 90 degrees out. But the timing of this,
to travel thousands of miles.
the timing of the end of that scene into your credits was beautiful, greatly done. The only thing I would say as far as the audio goes is that you need to increase the voiceover, because for some reason the voiceover is really quiet. And it should be at 0. Like the voiceover was recorded properly in the first place, so it should be in the you shouldn't really have to touch the decibels of the audio. So if you did do that, you need to change it back to 0. Other than that, you got the formatting down as well. So really, really good start here, Jesus. Like great job. Let me. Oh, let's look at that parallaxing real quick. Oh, and then if you add some motion blur onto these or you have the motion blur on there, it looks great.
To travel thousands.
Yeah, I think the you have the animation of the background scaling up, which I would do opposite, right? So I would start high and then scale back, like it's pushing back. Other than that, really good job.
Of miles. Every winter,
Oh, shoot. Hold on one second. Let me do this again. You guys are doing a really good job in class. All right, and then final one, Keith. Let's check it out.
Every winter, monarch butterflies migrate from North America to Latin America. Monarchs use a combination
Zoom in on this real quick.
Of air currents and thermals to travel thousands of miles.
Crazy, Keith. Did you have a problem with the audio? Because
from North America to Latin America.
I'm only hearing it in
Monarchs use a combination of air.
Did you use panning on your audio? Because I'm hearing the voiceover on this side of my headset, and then the audio, like the music, on this side of my headsets, which means that they're panned opposite, which panning is like changing a speaker in one direction to the other, right? So like rotating it. So like if I pan the object, or if I pan the audio all the way to the left, it's going to make it only play in my left headset or my left headphone. Whereas if I were to pan the audio all the way to the right, it would be only in my right earphone. And that's kind of what I'm getting here when I play it. Let me replay it again.
Every winter, monarch butterfly.
The VO is in both. So the VO is in stereo, which is fine.
Butterflies migrate from North America to Latin America.
You had a lot of problems with a pot of it in the pan of it, and I don't know why the audio plays like that. The VO sounds good, but the music is something funny. So I would just bring the music file back in here and redrop it in and see if that helps. But good start on this. Obviously, there's some work that needs to be done. We've talked about it, and I know that you're working on the transitions, so I won't talk about the transitions of it. I haven't edited the audio volume at all, or at least I don't remember messing with it, that feature. Okay, yeah, then I would try bringing it in directly, because like if I bring this down here and I hit L, I'm able to see the waveform, and the only thing I'm really able to update is the decibels here. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like you would have to intentionally do something to it. So if that's the case, I would just re-download the audio, bring it back into your file, and then do it that way. The other thing, let's go ahead and break down scene to scene. Obviously, I want it to scale in, there to be the circle, so I'll have you add that. The butterfly looks cool. I'm into the illustration of it. He's not really centered, so I would center him as well. And then
Every winter, monarch butterflies migrate.
he fades off a little too fast, but I know like that we talked
Great.
about the transition, so you want him to be there. We want to see a couple little flaps happening there. So you're gonna let him say this.
Every winter, monarch butterflies.
Right there when he's like monarch butterflies is where you're gonna want kind of the quick transition where it scales up. So this,
Every
once he
winter.
scales in, you'll have a couple flaps already going by that.
Winter, monarch
But the flapping looks good on there.
butterflies migrate from North America
Just speed it up
to
to
Latin America.
have that. We want the icons on here, and then right now it's just the. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's delete this from here. Right now, it just fades on when you want to use the trim paths. Probably, do you have it pre-composed into its own like pre-comp? If you have it in its own pre-comp, then you just have to shuffle the pre-comp over. You just have to move the position until it's centered. But if it's not in its own pre-comp, then you are going to have problems snapping it to the center, especially because of turning the wings into a 3D layer. You're going to probably have issues. So you need to start off with the butterfly centered before you start animating anything. And then this line here, we need to animate it on via a trim paths, and obviously you'll have a circle around the icon. And when you animate on the trim paths, it'll follow along. You're just adding a stroke to the path. If you watch last week's stream, you'll be able to, I go over all that too with this. And then as far as like look goes of this, I would kind of opposite of what I told Jesus. So I would increase the saturation of like the kind of darkness of the blues here, or the brightness of the blues, so they stand out from the gray background, because a gray background is just it's just competing. They're both at the same saturation level, so they look like they compete with each other. Yeah, okay. Yeah, if it's a pre-comp, you're just going to move the pre-comp over. The problem is when you pre-compose something, it's going to be the size of your composition that you're working in. So it's going to be 1920 by 1080. So if you try and snap it to the center, it's not going to work because it's already in the center. So you just have to move the pre-comp over a little bit. Sometimes that happens. Or if you just start with the butterfly centered right away, then you won't have that issue. And then obviously we're going to want to see the butterfly is going to be in an icon thing. It's going to reverse around. So I would watch the class sections over again to kind of see more step by step what I had to do to get to all of this stuff.
Monarchs use a combination of air currents and thermals to travel thousands of miles.
Let's see here. The wing flapping, it looks like it's there on something over here in the side, but I can't really distinguish it on these butterflies that are flying across. So you're going to want to make sure that if that's there, that it's distinguishable. And then we're going to want to see more butterflies, like quite a bit more. And then the variation in size and stuff. But they're following along a path. This guy right here is showing because of where the path ends. So all you got to do is grab the end of that one part of the path and move it over here. And then we won't see his little wings flapping while he's off screen, because I see what you did and you varied the timing of them, which is good. But you don't want that little piece showing because it's like, what's happening over there? My eyes want to go to it. And then obviously like spending a little bit more time in the background here.
Of miles.
And then bringing up that title or the credits thing
of
too.
Miles.
right about there. When he's saying
of
miles,
miles.
is when you want to be transitioning to the credit scene. And then you'll want this
Every
to happen
winter,
kind of right away.
monarch butterfly.
Like right as you're transitioning to the credit scene, you want the animation of your name to start happening right away. So, but you have time to fix this because this isn't due until next Monday. So it's due by midnight on the 6th. So if you want to re-watch the class parts of these and then resubmit it for a different grade, you can always do that. Because I know your work is, your work is stronger than what I'm seeing here. Not that it isn't like it's started here, but it just needs more work. Which I'm happy though that you turned it in. And I am apologize that section of the module didn't work. And I appreciate that you tried to like put it together in any way that you understood how to. And that's where, I'm happy of the stuff that you did try and do because like I said, turning in something is better than not turning in anything at all. So, really good start on this, Keith. It needs some work, but I have faith that you'll get all that stuff done. Do you have any questions about any of the feedback that I gave you? Also, like what's nice is that usually people have about the same things that are going on or something else happening in there. So you guys can kind of like, hearing the feedback of other students' work allows you to be like, oh, I'm going to have to change that in mine. But your formatting is good here too. So that's great. It's okay. That was a long class because that class lasted 3 hours. But what's nice about this, right, is that you have kind of the layout done. And so you can watch each scene as it goes by and then just update these according to that. You might have to restart on some sections of it, but you might also just have to update something, especially because with that first icon scene, like I said, if you do the work correctly in this first scene, it makes the second scene so much faster and easier because you don't have to actually, you just like plop in the icon, animate, like you do a path animation thing. You create a path, you plop in the icon, you copy the path of that like line to the icon position, and then it automatically follows it. And then all you have to do on that path that you created is add a stroke and then a trim paths. That's it. It's real quick. Fairly quick. But overall, I'm happy you turned something in so that we could go over it and talk about it. Right? I'm happy that you guys all worked hard to get this stuff turned in, especially over the holiday week. And so I'm happy to review that. Now we're almost at the end here. So Jasmine, I'm going to review this and give you feedback inside of Canvas for your hierarchies one. But I'm going to let you guys go a few minutes early today. I'm really happy with all of the work that you guys put forward in both of these projects. You guys did a really good job. The revision project is what we are doing for this week, right? So it doesn't include the Eve. It's not going to include the Eve project or the Monarch Butterfly project. Again, you're going to improve upon the projects that you've already completed. It's like obviously something that you're going to do in any design job as a graphic designer or motion designer. Make sure you're reading this paragraph very closely. If you have any questions, you can ask me about it. And then these are the projects that I expect to see in the revision round. If these projects are missing from the revision round, then you will be docked points as well. And if it's the first time I'm seeing the project in the revision round, then you'll get points, but you'll also have some points marked off. So kind of like a give and take of that there. Lena asked, the revision round submissions aren't going to be reviewed during the stream, right? I'm just wondering in case I have to submit before a class like a regular project. Correct. It is not going to be, if I give you guys feedback on like if there's more revisions you need to make, then I'll mention it in your comment section of the revision round when I'm grading. I'm not going to go over these, inside of class. I think it would just be extra time that we don't need to do. I can do that on my own time. I would rather dedicate your guys' class time to class, especially because we've already reviewed all of this stuff once. Um, and if I see your projects thrown in there without any of the changes that I've requested, you will also get points marked off for that. And I'll mention that kind of stuff in your comments as well. There isn't a rubric on this because it's pretty straightforward. You either put in the work with the changes, or and you get full credit or you don't. So that's how this is going to work. Other than that, do you guys have any other questions? Yeah, not a problem. Keith, how about you? You doing good? Cool. Well, I hope you guys have a good weekend. Thanks for sticking in with me on this review class because I know it's like not as exciting because you're not learning about animation, but it's an important part is learning like the critiques, right? So that you understand um just understand where you see like other people what they're doing and what you're doing and maybe where the changes need to be made and stuff like that. But you guys did really good. I'm proud of you guys. Keep hanging in. We're almost done with class. We got like a month and a week left. So other than that, enjoy your weekend and I will see you guys on Tuesday, okay? And we'll be jumping into a new really fun project kind of similar to this, but you guys get to pick your own topic along the lines of like a topic that I give you. So, yeah, not a problem, you guys. Have a good one. I'll talk to you later.